What up, everyone? DJ Anubis
And DJ Neko.
here with you in the Metal Time Radio podcast. We were here, special guest Chris Alexander, director, composer, writer extraordinaire. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you both for having me. I appreciate it. Anytime we can talk about movies and weird shit, I'm on board. So I appreciate the spotlight, and yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Is that a jukebox behind you?
Yeah, okay, so that's not just a jukebox, friends. This is a 1978 NSM Festival jukebox. This is the exact same, and it's a very rare model. It's the exact same model that was used in the movie Shaun of the Dead.
Woo-hoo!
In the Winchester bar, where the bartender gets his head smashed through it. It's not only the same model, but there's kind of like you can't see it now, but when it's lit up, there's this sort of like silhouette inside of like a generic rock performer is playing. You just see like the guitar. And that is extremely hard to find, that particular one. And but it is the exact same clone of the one from Shaun.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
So are you allowed to pick the records inside, or how do you load them?
This is my joint. Yeah. So yeah, of course I have like thousands of 45s and I rotate it often for sure.
Oh, that is so awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
I'm really jealous.
Yeah, I'm jealous of myself. I mean, I know honestly, sometimes, I collect pinball machines and jukeboxes and weird carnival stuff. And sometimes it's just your life. And then you sit back and go, shit, I have this in my house. When I was a little boy, I would have like died to even think of that this could be humanly possible. So I don't take any of it for granted at all. I love all this kind of stuff. And it's really cool to have.
Yeah, as much as I like that, I'm really digging the Dawn of the Dead poster.
I am too. I love it.
Like
it's my favorite movie. My favorite movie of all time, Dawn of the Dead, no doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will never be dethroned. I mean, there's other things orbiting Dawn that sometimes sit on the same chair beside Dawn and then fuck off, but Dawn never moves. Dawn will always be the king.
Did you ever see Train to Busan?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. I saw that at I saw the premiere of Train to Busan, the Canadian premiere at the Montreal Fantasia Film Festival with a packed crowd.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I mean it's a great movie, but to see that movie, because it's a more action oriented film, to see that movie on the big screen with a packed audience was really wild, really something. Yeah.
How was the audience? Because I love when you see a good audience and they're like cheering when things happen. We've been to movies where we are the only ones laughing or cheering, and we're just kind of like,
well, yeah, that's me. I mean, any multiplex movie I go to, if it's not a Friday night opening with all the teenagers there, which you don't want, so it tends to be a little bit more subdued. But yeah, I'm always the guy punching the air, and if I like it, or going like this if I hate it. Either way, the fists are in the air. But yeah, no, I mean, in Montreal at Fantasia Film Festival, I don't know if you know about it. It's like, I think it's the second biggest like fantasy horror cult film festival in the world.
Oh.
I think number one is Sitges, and then maybe Fantastic Fest, and then Fantasia. They're all kind of in there, and the crowds just, I mean, they're legendary crowds. So
yeah,
you want to see that kind of movie with that kind of crowd who's come specifically for that kind of experience, and they go fucking wild.
That's
actually,
amazing.
The rowdiest movie, it was so funny. I have 3 little boys, single dad. I took and they're not so little anymore. I shouldn't say that. 2 of them are young teenagers, but whatever. They're still my little boys.
Right.
We go to the movies a lot. And I hate superhero movies by and large, but I do my part. If there's something cool and they want to see it, we'll go. Okay. But we went and saw Blue Beetle last week.
We haven't seen it yet.
Hey, you know what? It was so good. Like, I cannot stress enough what a weird, quirky, compact little piece of pulp, fantasy it was. Incredibly well written, incredibly well performed. But my point being is that the crowd we saw it with, and it was a diverse crowd of families, little kids, older people, was the rowdiest fucking crowd I have ever. And I've gone to see like midnight screenings of Eraserhead. I've seen it all. This was the rowdiest crowd I've ever sat with in a movie theater. They were yelling, they were screaming, they were laughing, they were telling people not to go in places, they were cheering, they were standing up and applaud. It was kids were there's two little Japanese kids behind me, like screaming in Japanese, and their dad wouldn't tell them to stop talking. So they just became part of the experience. It was wild. It was surreal. And we were also in the 40X, which I don't know if you know what that is, but it's like, there's only a few of these theaters in Canada. I think there's a couple. They probably call it something else in the US because I'm in Toronto.
We call them IMAX, maybe?
The moving seats. And then fire smoke comes into that, and it smells like something burning, and the wind's in your face. And so it was truly one of the most incredible theatrical experiences I've ever had in my life. The movie's good too, but it was the experience. It was just something else.
And I love that because I grew up as a teenager going to the midnight screenings of Rocky Horror Picture Show multiple times. So the audience participation is a big thing for me. And I know that's sometimes people hate it, but I love it.
You know, the only thing I hate about stuff like that is when it's fabricated. Like this was authentic in the sense that people in this theater paid that money, didn't know what they were going to get. And it was like a goddamn party. And it didn't mean to be. No one went into this movie thinking that it was going to be a party. Now, when you go to Rocky Horror, you know exactly you're going to bring your bag of toast and your rice, and you know exactly what you're going to do. Becomes an interaction. It becomes like a play. But to stumble into a movie where suddenly the audience just loses their shit is pretty. It's a once in a lifetime, not lifetime, but it rarely happens.
Yeah, I love that too at concerts. I mean, a lot of concerts are also, you know, people are excited to be at concerts, but when you go to an experience where you see everyone is just so into the band, you're just like,
no, my neighbors went and saw the Metallica concerts, but they were telecast at a movie theater, which doesn't appeal to me at all.
Right.
Simulcast, telecast, whatever. And I asked her, I said, well, what was it like? She goes, it was, to be honest, it was incredibly dull. And I knew that would be the case. She said there were barely any people in the theater. I'm sitting here watching this concert. No one's cheering. There's no one cheering. There's no, and it became the most, it would be the most surreal kind of non-event experience. Like, of course, the music's great. It's shot really well. But you don't, robbed of an energy, a concert is just, I mean, that's why we go to these.
I mean, you could have literally just sat at home and did that.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we go to the movie theater. That's, theater, movies, live theater, concerts, it all stems from the same nucleus of that human experience of gathering together in a room and focusing all our, we're always so divided all the time, and everyone has their own lives and everyone's doing it. But for that hour and a half or 2 hours or whatever it is, we're all on the same page with our attentions focused to the same thing. And there's a kind of kinship, a kind of unison between everybody because we're experiencing this together. And when the lights go up and we all go our separate ways, we may never talk to each other again. We may hate each other. You're a Republican, I'm a Democrat. But in that very moment, none of that matters. We just have that unique human experience.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir, as you say. This is why you do what you do. But that's why we do what we do collectively in this respect. Yeah.
Exactly. So I did have a chance to check out Parasite Lady, which I found on Tubi, and
God bless Tubi, right?
I love Tubi.
we love that.
When I was a kid,
we watched so much Tubi.
I used to sleep with an alarm clock under my pillow before VHS was even a thing. I'd circle the TV guide anytime a horror movie was on, and I could only research it by looking at my Leonard Maltin book, so I didn't know what I was going to get, and I'd get up late at night, and it was just a party because you never knew what you were going to find. And Tubi to me is like the only thing in streaming land that feels like that. You just never know. If you just dig and dig and dig and go through those wormholes, you never know what you're going to find on
and they have some live things going. Well, not live, but they have like TV channels too.
Yeah, I love that. I love that shit. That's where we used to be, right? I mean, and the commercial comes up, and that's when you take your bathroom break and your snack break. Someone else is in charge of the entertainment. You got to make that appointment.
Right.
I love that stuff.
I used to make her laugh because growing up in the 70s, you're probably old enough to remember as well as I.
Yeah.
Midnight used to be you're in Canada, so for us in America, the national anthem would come on at midnight. And
we had the same. We had the same different anthem, same deal. Yeah.
Yeah. So I used to cry as a kid because I'm like, no, TV's off. No.
Well, there was in Canada and Toronto, we were any border town stuff from the US, we would get those channels initially.
Oh, that's cool.
By cable. So there was a Buffalo channel. It was an NBC affiliate called WGRZ, I think. There's a couple of Buffalo channels, but they had a show called The Cat's Pajamas. And after the news fucked off at 11:30, they would run all night Twilight Zone. That's why I fell in love with the Twilight Zone from the Cat's Pajamas.
Cool.
Twilight Zone reruns, old 60s TV shows, movies, and a lot of horror movies. That's how I discovered, I just wrote a book with Roger Corman about his Edgar Allan Poe movies. That's how I discovered those movies.
Oh, that's so awesome.
But what they would do is they do the anthem around 3:30 or something in the morning. And they wouldn't fuck off for the night. They would somebody would just put on a 16 millimeter print of a movie and it would just run a film without commercials. So they would just throw a movie on and walk away and everyone would take their break and reset for the day. But there was always something going on. There was always a movie playing at that period of time with no commercials at all. So it was and again, that's how I saw stuff like Blackula and David Cronenberg's They Came From Within and Death Curse of Tartu and just weird shit at that time when I shouldn't have been awake and I maybe wasn't even barely awake. So I was experiencing it in a kind of hazy way anyways. Just beautiful times. And with Tubi, sometimes you do get that. You get, stuff that you just don't even know what planet it came from.
Right.
For me, I'm a little bit younger than him, but for the national anthem would go off at midnight on certain channels, but other channels you would get Kung Fu, Godzilla, and horror movies. And I've always been an insomniac, so for me, anything Godzilla, Kung Fu, or horror has always been close to my heart because, I'm talking even when I was 12, 13 years old, I'm up all night, I guess.
Yeah. No, me too. I was the exact same way. And like I said, I would sleep with the alarm clock. And so that coming downstairs and turning on the television and hearing a creak upstairs, you knew it was mom and dad. You turn off the TV and you're like, because you don't want to get caught. Yeah. And then you flip on the TV and there'd be some vampire biting into some chick. And you, oh my God. You don't even know how that happened because when you turned off the TV, there was no vampire. Turn it on. There's a vampire. So it became this weird interactive experience and it was terrifying and amazing. But like you say, to your point, is that there's a beauty and a nostalgia and a warmth to that recalls that safe place when you were a kid. So some of this, that's what always makes me laugh. Some of this stuff, I don't want to show my kids all this. It's like, my God, I was raised with this stuff.
Yeah, I know. The stuff that I watched when I was a kid is probably...
But it's so we have a warmth and a connection to that stuff because it was so fun to be scared in a safe space.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandma, she taught me how to read, but she loved to read Stephen King and Dean Koontz and probably not appropriate for children type books. But I was always just bothering her all the time. So I remember her reading me needful things.
Well, there's an old saying that people like to be scared. So even as kids, we might be flicking off the TV at the scary moments, but in the end, we're going back to it because we like.
Well, and also the psychology. And again, I'm a father, I have kids, but if you tell your kids, don't, it's like the old Looney Tunes. Bugs Bunny is trying to set up Yosemite Sam, and he goes
or Daffy.
Don't go in that door. Don't look in that door. Don't look in that door. And of course, Yosemite says, "Oh yeah." First thing he does is open the door, and there's a bomb. Yeah. But that's human curiosity. But when you're a kid and your parents say, "Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this," of course, all you can think about is why. Because kids are logical. They're like, well, why the fuck can't I do that? And that doesn't make any sense because they didn't tell me why I shouldn't do it. They didn't tell me what would happen. They just told me no. And of course, you become fixated on doing that. So when they're saying you can't see this movie, then that's all you want to see. That becomes your holy grail, right? I remember speaking of Dawn of the Dead, when I was little in Canada, we got Dawn of the Dead, I think. I mean, I was too little. It came out in 79. I was 5. So, but it was, I don't even think it came here. And if it did, it was cut to ribbons. We had draconian censors in Ontario at that point. And so my cousin who lived in Windsor on the border of Detroit, he'd tell me all the time. It's like, I just drove my friend every weekend. Him and his buddies would drive over to Detroit to watch Dawn of the Dead. And then he'd come back and I'd just be sitting there like, yeah, tell me that part. Oh yeah, what happened in that part? Okay, and then what happened? Like, it was just like, tell me all this gore and this guts and this crazy shit. And, you know, I didn't see Dawn of the Dead till many years later, but I felt like I'd seen it because of these incredible stories of this wild cousin of mine who literally drove to another country to see this movie that he was forbidden, that he wasn't allowed to see. It was just so rock and roll, you know?
Yeah, I remember when I had seen Night of the Living Dead, I'm like, okay, this is really good. And then, but like Dawn of the Dead was like on this whole other level. Because, you know, Tom Savini, his work. Yeah.
I love Dawn of the Dead. You know, Anubis knows that. Like, it's my, I think it's my favorite zombie movie.
Well,
like,
it's a good choice. I mean, it's.
Well, what did you think of Snyder's remake?
You know, when it first came out, I used to be a publicist at Warner Brothers Films for many years in the early part of the century.
Cool.
Yeah, in Canada here. And so we got advanced stuff all the time. And Universal, we were friends with the other studios. We'd trade screeners. And Universal sent us the first 10 minutes of that movie. Initially, I was pissed. You know, like, I'm a Dawn of the Dead purist. I think at that point I was writing for Rue Morgue magazine. And I was so like, yeah, fuck that shit. But then I watched those first 10 minutes. I'm like, oh, yeah, this is pretty fucking wild.
Yeah.
And then I saw it and it blew my mind. Now, remember, the only running zombies, I think, at that point were maybe 28 Days Later, if that had even come out, and they weren't even really zombies. And before that, stuff like Umberto Lenzi's Nightmare City from 1980. And they weren't really zombies either. There was weird Italians with like silly putty on their face who were affected by radiation running around with machetes, right?
Yeah.
But so this was kind of wild to see this high octane action movie. And I think I went back to the theater to see it 3 times. I couldn't compare it to Dawn of the Dead, though. The only thing it related to me in the context of Dawn of the Dead was it was in a shopping mall. The dead were coming back to kill. It was a completely different experience, and it existed for a completely different reason. Now, that said, I go back to Dawn of the Dead, Snyder's version. I don't think I can watch it anymore. I don't think it has not aged well. To me, I think it's been copied so much. The look of it, the feel of it, it does the sense of humor, robbed of that theatrical experience and that kind of like being blindsided by it. I don't think it doesn't have good revisit power. Whereas Dawn of the Dead, the original,
yes,
I can go back and watch that once a month. I swear to God, and I will always find something new that I love about it. Always.
Yeah, I agree with that because, like, I remember same thing you said about how it was impressive how they made them fast. I'm like, wow, that's pretty terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
But over time now, it's like it's not the same experience I had when I first watched it. So the original Dawn of the Dead is still far superior to me.
Well, and Dawn of the Dead isn't just a scary movie. It's scary in the sense that the scariness, Dawn it's such an opera. You know, it begins with a bang, with panic, and then it goes into the ultra violence when they're clearing out the apartment building, and then it settles down into a character piece. Then it becomes almost like a Western, and then a war movie. It becomes a war movie. Then it becomes this existential, almost European drama. These characters who are bored out of their minds in this utopian paradise. And then there's satire. There's so many things happening in Dawn of the Dead, so many eccentricities and so many peaks and valleys that it's a full meal. Whereas the remake is just a horror movie, which is nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But it has one speed, and that's fast. Right.
You know, now I want to watch Dawn of the Dead, so
well, we should abort right now.
That's right now. Like, put it on, and we'll watch it.
I collect film. I collect 16 millimeter film prints. A pretty
yeah,
good
I saw
library.
that on your social media.
Really cool.
Yeah, pretty good library. And I have the Cannes cut of Dawn of the Dead. It's actually George's print, because George, what happened is I knew George really, really well. He was a good friend of mine but that's not why I have his print. In '79, he came to Toronto for the film festival with Dario Argento, and they screened Dawn of the Dead together. And this was the print that George brought from Laurel, from Richard Rubinstein's joint, and it was the full Cannes cut, the long version. They screened it, and George just left it here, and it was donated to a library. And a few years ago, that print was given to me, so I got George's print posthumously after he left us. But George moved to Toronto in 2005 because he came here to shoot Land of the Dead, and he met a woman. So he left his wife and left his family and moved up here, became a Canadian citizen. and just lived like down the street from me. So we became really good friends. I used to go there, once a month and just drink scotch with him and just watch Turner Classic Movies, and became really, he even built like a statue. Like he had a statue commissioned of himself holding my severed head. And I was the first guy to speak at his funeral. So it was, and everybody, and the weird thing about that was Dawn of the Dead, favorite movie since I was 11. I became friends with George, and then I go to his funeral to say goodbye to him. And everybody's there. It was almost like the movie Big Fish, where suddenly all the characters from the stories are there gathered together at the funeral.
Yeah.
And there's Savini with me. And there's Greg Nicotero. I spoke before Nicotero or Savini. What the fuck's that all about? Savini, Nicotero. I had the whole cast of Dawn of the Dead, Galen Ross, the Night of the Living Dead alumnus. Everybody was just there, just gathered together to say goodbye to George. And it was one of the most surreal, bittersweet, cinematic, but also incredibly melancholy experiences of my life.
Yeah.
That is
it's funny you brought up
incredible.
Argento,
It is,
because Suspiria is like my favorite film of all
Is that
time,
right?
so,
It really is. He loves the original Suspiria.
The remake's not too bad either, but it's a different experience.
Yeah. But it's interesting because with Parasite Lady, there's this like use of color you're using in it, like a little bit of psychedelia. But it was curious because I watched Female Werewolf recently too.
Mm-hmm.
And in both films, you don't have much dialogue. It's just more of like scenery and actions and stuff. What is the reasoning behind that with your film?
He's comparing you to Argento.
Well, no, I mean, but that's a good point because there's many, there's a lot to unpack there, but I made like 11 of these movies and they're all connected in ways where there's sometimes the same characters bleed over into them, same locations. I do all the music, so some of the music and themes bleed into.
Oh, I didn't know that you do.
Yeah, they're all like, I consider them to be one giant film that takes place in the internal mind of maybe one person or various people that are kind of connected. Anyways, I have my little concepts of what they are.
The Chris Alexander universe.
Yeah, people joke about that. They say that. Yeah, the Kaku or one of my guys who works with me that kills the Kaku, the Chris Alexander syndrome.
The Kaku, I like that.
Yeah, whatever. Anyways, but. To your point, so one of the things about the dialogue was, okay, let's take Suspiria, for instance, a movie I adore, worship. Sometimes it definitely floats in the top 10 and is a huge influence. All Argento is, I think my personal favorite is Phenomena, because I saw the Creepers cut when I was 10.
Yeah.
And that was my first Dario. So your first, rodeo,
exactly.
you never forget your first time. Anyways.
It's your first love.
Yeah, there you go. But to your point, I remember seeing Suspiria and still recall it. What a powerful audio-visual experience that movie is. The strong points of it aren't the oration or dialogue or the plot. That means nothing. It's characters walking through velvet-lined corridors while that goblin music just pounds, bang, bang, like through the corridors and the lights and the eyeballs and
I love the witch. Like when they would just
the goblin music
out of nowhere, witch. All the time.
It's such it's a rock video before there were rock videos.
Right.
And then the downside is when Udo Kier comes with his book on witches and they sit by the fountain. He tries to lay out all that exposition, and no exposition could justify any of this phantasmagoria. Anyway, so why do they even bother? And then I remember seeing Hellraiser 2, same thing. I was just struck by what an incredibly sensual experience it was. And then people would open their mouth, Ashley Lawrence would start talking and like, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, oh, shut up.
Just stop.
Can this just be mute? Like, why do we need to spoon feed the audience all the idiotic exposition? This is a movie like Scorsese says about Mario Bava. You bypass the intellect entirely, and you have a visceral physical connection and reaction to the picture. So the philosophy with all my stuff is primarily, occasionally I will throw in just little bits of kind of strange arcane dialogue just to add a little bit of texture and weirdness, almost like a musical note. But I like the images and the music and the sound to do the talking, and it also makes it kind of universal, I think, in a sense. I remember taking Queen of Blood to Rome, and we screened it on the beaches.
Oh, I'm sure that did great in Rome. Well, that is like their thing.
It went over really good, but not just because that was their thing. It was the Italian horror film festival in Nettuno, which is just outside of Rome. And I was with Claudio Simonetti And Dario was there. Actually, the billboard on the beach had my name above Dario's as the special guest because of alphabetical order. Yeah, because of alphabetical order only. And I was like, this is great. But they were all there, and they screened Queen of Blood outside by a castle on the beach, and there were bats flying around the screen.
Oh my god.
Everybody loved it. And I loved it because barely any of them spoke English. Because the movie has no dialogue, everyone could experience it. It spoke a universal language, body language, right? So it went over extremely well because they didn't have to worry about bad dubbing or awkward subtitles or anything. They just could experience it like a visceral reaction. So that's why I don't pepper in a lot of dialogue. The only movie of mine that has dialogue heavy is a movie called Necropolis Legion, which I did as part of a stunt with Full Moon called The Deadly 10. That had Lynn Lowry from Shivers and the Crazies in it.
Oh, wow.
And,
I haven't seen that one yet, so I'm writing
cool.
that down.
It's kind of cool. It's on Tubi. And
I love Shivers is great.
Love Tubi.
A witch that, she's a vampire witch, but she has, and on her breasts, she has the mouths, and, she unleashes them. She feeds breast to breasts of other women, and then she spits milk out, and her familiars drink the milk from her.
Okay, I need
all that stuff's great. But the thing I hated was, it was a script that kind of I inherited, and I had to put dialogue into it. And we had a great actress in this LA-based actress named Augie Duke, who I flew up. She's amazing. So she could sell anything, but it was still clunky as shit. I was rewriting the thing as I went. And so I look back on that one a little bit. It doesn't feel like 100% my movie because I was trying to compromise.
Yeah.
But by and large, you won't find much oration in my pictures at all.
So when did you first start directing? Like, what made you get the idea back in your head? As a small lad, when did you start?
Because I loved movies since I was a little boy. It was, I remember discovering two things: the House of Frankenstein in Niagara Falls, which is a haunted house. My grandmother took me there, blew my mind, terrified me, but also fascinated me. And then I discovered the band Kiss. In the library, someone misfiled the Love Gun record in the kids section. I picked it up, and it's that Ken Kelly painting, and there's
that is definitely not children friendly.
Fangs, and there's all those chicks at the band's feet, and so it was like kind of sexy, but I didn't know what sexy was, and scary. And I used to have nightmares of Gene Simmons coming down out of my ceiling vent as a ghost.
Yep.
And so I always why am I so infatuated with all this shit? And then movies, and my parents loved movies, so they would experience movies with me. My dad sneaking me into the theater to see an American Werewolf in London, and so and finding Fangoria when I could, and all this crazy shit. So I always knew I wanted to be part of that world. I just, I am in Canada. There's no way humanly possible I could be, right? Because we don't have anything. We didn't have any culture up here like that at all. So I wanted to do it. I went to film school as I got older. I got into a couple of elite film schools. I dropped out of both of them, but I made a couple good films. But this is back when we had to do 16 millimeters, so it was very expensive. And I figured this won't work. So I started doing my own music and created a band that I toured that was basically like a live action movie. And I was always writing music for movies that didn't exist in my mind. Mm-hmm. And then the way, just always had my eye on the prize that I would become a filmmaker. Ended up as a journalist, becoming a film critic, first a publicist, then a film critic, and writing for Rue Morgue, which was a new Canadian magazine at the time, a horror film magazine. It is now 30 years old, which makes me feel, or 25 years old, makes me feel super old. But I was there from day one. And then I started writing for Fangoria in New York, and always my eye on the prize. I want to direct. But this is how I built like a Rolodex of contacts, right? Because I'd interview all my heroes. I had this web of friends in the industry. And so then I became the editor-in-chief of Fangoria. They called me up one day and said, hey man, we like what you do. Would you like to run this whole magazine? And here I am in Toronto, and they're in New York. And they said, come move to New York. I said, no, I have a little kid. I only had one kid at the time. I said, I want to stay here, but I have the internet, so I can run it there. I'll come to New York once a month. Fine. So I did that for 6 years. And so you become editor of the biggest horror film magazine in the world.
Right? Oh my God.
Everybody's your friend, and no one's your friend, but everyone's your friend. Because everyone wants ink in the pages. And I didn't really know that at the time, but whatever. So people started coming up to me and just, giving me opportunities because I was this guy. And one of the things that happened was Dave Gregory at Severin said, look, how about we give you a little bit of money? You want to make your own movie? I said, goddamn right I do. And that was a movie called Blood for Irina. which kind of laid the foundation of the way I make movies. It opened in Paris. I think it played theatrically in Paris for a while and went Blu-ray, DVD, all over the joint. And that kind of started it. And then I just was able to call people up and say, look, I just want a small bit of money. You can own the movie. I just want to make a film, and you got to leave me alone and let me do it my way. And they always did. And the movies of all of them have been released. I only own 2 of them, which now in my advanced years, I'm looking back at the deals I made. I'm like, I was a little bit too eager, but regardless, I've had a good run in the sense that I've made really low budget independent films, but I was allowed to not compromise the way I wanted to make them and still let them see the light of day to a distribution, on a distribution path.
You were able to be yourself. You were able to take your own ideas and put them into film. Like, what was the movie that we just watched of Chris's?
Parasite Lady.
Parasite. Okay. So I'm watching this.
Parasite Lady.
Ooh.
Oh, look at it. It's that art you flashed. It's a Toronto artist. She's Spanish, actually. She lives in Toronto now. Her name's Susie Vilches. She goes under the name Suspiria Land. You can go to her site, suspirialand.com. She's a painter. She's brilliant. Anyways, I think that art is so beautiful.
Oh, yeah. It's one of the things that drew me
you?
to the movie.
Yeah, she does a lot. I when I quit Fangoria, I started a magazine with Charles Band at Full Moon called Delirium. So I created that. I'm the editor of that. I published that. And Susie does a lot of my covers. So she did this as a favor for me. And
How'd you hook up with Full Moon?
Well, when I was a little boy, I loved, again, I know everything about almost every horror movie ever made, unless it's in the past few years because there's so much going on, I kind of lose touch. But I'm a kind of like a walking encyclopedia. Dates, running times, who was in it, alternate titles.
Wow.
It's literally my life's work. I teach horror film history at Sheridan College here in Toronto. I mean, this is what I do.
You are living the dream.
Well, yeah, I'm living. That's what I'm doing. I mean, this is we're all living. This is my work. So it's still the way I feed children, and, it's not always a dream, sometimes a nightmare. But, how did I hook up with Charlie? I was raised on Empire Pictures stuff from the 80s, like Reanimator, Troll, Ghoulies, From Beyond. Not so much Full Moon. Kind of felt not a huge fan of Full Moon stuff, but I was a huge fan of Empire, huge fan of Charlie, and a huge fan of Charlie's story because his dad produced all those great spaghetti westerns in the 60s in Italy. And so Charlie came to Toronto at a convention.
Love spaghetti westerns.
Well, me too. So Charlie's dad was Albert Band, who made a lot of the Sergio Corbucci stuff, right?
Yeah.
So he came to Toronto for a convention and they fucked him up. They didn't ship all his merch here. So here he is in a convention with no merch. He's like, fuck it, I'm going to go home.
That's so
And we were in contact for something or other. And I said, look, why don't we just grab a bite? He's like, okay, I'll take you out for dinner and find a good restaurant. So I did. We went out for dinner and we just closed the restaurant, just talking about movies and its history. And then literally the end of the night, after a lot of wine, I said, dude, why don't you and I just start a fucking magazine? He's like, that's a great idea. He said, done. He goes back to the plane Monday morning, calls me up and said, so what are we going to call this thing? And within like a month, we had the first issue published. So
that's awesome.
That is so cool because that reminds me of like 80s underground, like little pamphlets that used to come out about music and movies and stuff. And nobody wanted to it wasn't like the mainstream. And you were able to be again at the ground floor. So you can say,
I mean, I've had some good. I'll be 49 real soon, sooner than I'd like. So I've been around for a while, but not too long. I was a bit of a late bloomer because, again, in Canada, it was not like I was born in LA and all the opportunities were orbiting me. I had to fight for these opportunities. They weren't here. Yeah. It was only through the advent of the internet that I could really go crazy and really make those, build that web of connections. But as you know, because you do the same, use what you guys do too, right? But before the internet, my God, writing letters and sending them out and then looking at the mailbox for like 6 months. And
yeah,
I mean, my God, but the entire world was slower, so you didn't feel it as much, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've had a lot of good fortune, some of it being luck, but I've always had the philosophy and a burning passion to be not just an observer, but a participant. And my philosophy has always been, that old adage that, you're waiting for your ship to come in. Well, I don't wait for my ship. What I do is I send out a fucking fleet every day. So my take is that if I send 100 ships out every day, the odds are most of those will crash on a reef somewhere. But the odds are that at least one is going to come back, or two. And one of them that does eventually come back is going to be a good fucking ship. And I've been really lucky that a lot of good fucking ships have come back to me, you know. So yes, luck, but also keeping my eye on that prize and perseverance, and also having a lot of heroes and reading a lot about how they did what they did and trying to not emulate exactly, but also learn from their triumphs and also their mistakes.
Yeah.
So a lot of people always say that they're quote unquote lucky, but especially in your case, because you're such a hard worker and you have been just laying everything out there, and you've been a writer, a director, a music writer, you have to understand luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So you have prepared your entire life and you have made the right connections to make your luck your own like path.
Yeah, I'm not Forrest Gump. I didn't just like fail my way upwards, you know. But it happens that, you know, it does happen that sometimes you are in the right place at the right time. But to your point, you know, anyone can be in the right place at the right time. But, you know, if somebody puts me on the spot and says, you know, who directed this movie, and I know, so if I'm in that right place,
it's your wheelhouse.
Yeah, I'm going to give you I'm going to give you some stuff. I'm going to be able to, you know, I'm prepared for being in the right place at the right time. I guess.
The one thing I love.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Sorry, I was just saying when it came to Parasite Lady, it was kind of a weird thing, kind of off-brand, but looking at Ariel Edwards there,
she is so beautiful.
She reminds me a lot, like just sort of look-wise, as Anya Taylor-Joy. I didn't know if you thought that too.
Of course, yeah. See, she's attacking my lady friend Ali Chappell there in that scene. And Ali found her. I think they went to college together or something. I'm not sure.
That's cool.
Yeah, but she knew her, and she put her in a couple of her Ali directs. She put her in a couple of her short films, and it was always the fact that, you know, I think people, when they trash Ariel online, they call her Anya Failure Joy, which she has a sense of humor about.
Why do they trash her? That's so mean.
Yeah, internet. You know what I mean? She's a woman on the internet who's, you know, she's a cosplayer, and so she's really out there, very successful in her world.
The internet is mean.
Oh, the internet is mean.
Fuck the internet.
People are mean when they're hiding, right? When they don't have to show their face.
That's right. They're keyboard warriors.
Yes,
they can just type a bunch of bullshit.
Yes. But she's got a sense of humor about that, because there's definitely a resemblance. But I, you know, in filming her, because I shoot my own stuff, I do everything. But in filming her and really studying her, because that Parasite Lady, you'll see when you're watching it, it's like I stopped making a movie at some point and just said, I'm just gonna like stare at her face for a long time.
Yes.
I'm just gonna why would I break this? Everything about this is so perfect.
Yeah.
There's this one scene, like it's like half her face and her lips, and she like was just like there.
Yeah, it's
and it was 2 minutes of that.
It's like looking at a painting for a long period of time. You don't want to stop looking at it because you're staring at every pore, every little something. So I let my camera do that. Yeah. But in looking at her for extended periods of time, not only on set but also in the edit, she also looked to me like
she's just phenomenal.
Well, she's got an alien beauty. Like, it's like she's beautiful, but she doesn't fit the mold of a traditional quote unquote beauty. But who wants that?
I don't know. I think she's beautiful. I think
she reminds me of a lot like the British actress Barbara Steele.
Yes.
You know, yeah.
Yeah, especially in the eyes. The eyes.
With the big eyes, the lips, the angles. There's a certain kind of unique alien beauty about Ariel that is very kin to some of those iconic performers, like definitely like a Barbara Steele kind of vibe. But Anya Taylor-Joy, same thing. She has, again, a very unique, interesting, almost alien, wide-eyed, almost like, it's almost hard to articulate how you respond to that kind of beauty, because it strikes you. You don't forget it. She doesn't look like anyone else. And I think that's what's so interesting about Ariel's face, is that it's incredibly unique.
Yeah, interesting thing is also, and it's kind of along the same topic, it's with your use of colorization and style. I was perusing your social feed, and
oh no,
saw a picture of the cover.
Are you
of
creeping
Mandy.
me? You're creeping
Yeah.
me?
He's
That's okay. I'm teasing you. Go on. Yeah.
I'm stalking you.
Yeah.
But it was a cover of Mandy from Panos Cosmatos, and like he's probably my favorite director right now.
Okay.
Even though I like Beyond the Black Rainbow the most. Are you a fan of his?
You know, when my first movie came out the same year as Beyond the Black Rainbow, and a couple festivals would double feature them together. Actually.
Oh wow!
Yeah, which was cool. I mean, I knew his dad, who directed
Tombstone.
Rambo 2 and Of Unknown Origin, which is a great killer rat movie here, shot in Toronto with Peter Weller and Shannon Tweed. Anyways, yes,
Tweed. Oh.
Yeah, Mrs. Gene Simmons.
Yeah, exactly.
But no. Yes, of course, I love his stuff. Mandy blew my mind. Black Rainbow was fantastic, but Mandy took it to another level for me. I'm a huge Nick Cage fan too. I got some great Nick Cage stories too.
Oh wow!
But no, I thought that was fantastic. His episode of Del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, I thought was probably the best.
Wait, Nick Cage was on Cabin of Curiosities?
No, the Panos Cosmatos.
Okay.
Directed an
episode. Like, what?
No, he directed an episode, and actually, I think Peter Weller was in it. Speaking of honoring his dad's former star. But no, I love Mandy very much. I mean, that's not I wouldn't say Mandy's particularly a huge influence on me, because I was kind of doing my thing like that before.
Yeah.
He came on.
But you appreciate it.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of Panos being inspired by the same people I'm inspired by.
Right.
By Suspiria, for sure. I mean, you can see.
Well, it also goes to my second question, because I'm also a Gene Rollins fan, and I was thinking of a movie like The Iron Rose, where there's like almost no dialogue at all. So
big influence.
Yeah.
Lips of Blood. Fascination, all that stuff. I mean, Roland and Jess Franco, huge influences on me.
I should have worn my Franco T-shirt. Darn it! I had. It said like the future is Franco. Like,
okay, nice. Yeah, I've seen that shirt. I want that shirt. I used to have a great Jess Franco shirt that Uncle Bob Martin made, the former editor of Fangoria. It was just Franco going like that. I don't know what the hell I did with that shirt. It was awesome. But that's a huge influence on me. All that European stuff, 100%. Where it's more, again, it's more poetic. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's more lyrical. It's more sensual, and it's also very feminine.
Yes.
You know,
I honestly I agree, because their language by itself is more poetic than English, if you think about it. And I've studied a few languages, and that's why they call it like the romance languages, like Spanish, Portuguese, French. Everything is a little bit more.
Well, it's also their culture too. It's an older culture. It's more.
Their history in the arts.
Yes, their history in the arts is deep and rich, and they're surrounded by history at all times. Their architecture and their life, their food. So they just have much, by and large, especially during that period, and their cinema. I mean, just a much more, I don't say evolved, but certainly less commercial, less crass, less American kind of way of looking.
More like authentic. Is that the right word?
It's just more primordial. It's just more earthy. It's earthier, you know?
Yeah.
But, the other thing is the feminine is a big part with my stuff too. If you look at any of my movies, I think one movie or two movies have men in them, and they're not big parts of the movie at all. They take place on, I think, all my last few movies. Someone said, "Oh, he makes movies about the queer experience." I'm like, "The what now?" No, I definitely do not. But what I tried to do is create a landscape. I think, okay, if I'm going to be pretentious and say I'm kind of like an artist, I'm a painter, then I'd rather paint beautiful flowers than blocks of concrete. And to me, men are like blocks of concrete. Exactly. I'm not interested. But women, I am definitely interested from an aesthetic point of view. But also what I like to do is create a landscape where it's all female. And then we try to look for the masculine in there, because we're all combinations of masculine and feminine. So
and I was actually, oh my God. I was going to say that about Parasite Lady, because the master was such a butch, mean lady.
Yeah, she's almost like, Taya Munster, the wig and the, I'm trying to create, that's what I'm trying to create, is various degrees of predator, of like strong female. And the female doesn't always have to be like virtuous. She can be mean and cruel and domineering and you know, and so you kind of forget when you're watching. Hopefully, that's my point, is trying to forget when you're watching these pictures about that male-female dynamic entirely when in that context, and instead forget about gender at all when you're watching this stuff. And now you're just watching beautiful creatures exist in a world that has the same dynamic as we have normally in the normal world, but there's just no dudes in it.
I need to ask you a really important question though.
Yeah.
In Parasite Lady, the beautiful red-haired woman walks in the sunlight. How is that possible?
Well, I invented these creatures. I don't even call them, I mean, in the description, call them vampires, sure.
I keep telling her it's called like the interstellar vampire, so that's probably like a whole different plane.
But even that, it's like, you know, I had in my mind, I made these Blood for Irina, Queen of Blood, and Blood Dynasty. They're a trilogy. All about this character named Irina who keeps getting reborn in various parts.
Oh, at the end, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. But so it's like, you know, to me.
Spoiler alert, anyone. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, I had that when the fourth one was going to be that in the fourth picture, you see Irina's actually in a lab of some kind. And she's been a test subject where she's been, you know, given all these different stimuli, and they're trying to extract vampirism from her, so they can use it. Like, it was really ambitious and stupid and crazy. But it was the point is that all these movies took place in her mind. So in my movie,
shut up.
Yeah, so that all her
events, stop right now.
Born in the West and in this period, and that's why everything intersects. And sometimes she's a different character with the same name, and that every character in the movie is just versions of her.
That's
so
cool.
She's actually only interacting, almost like masturbatory. She's interacting with herself, and that could be said for Parasite Lady too. It's in the it could be in the back alley of this woman's mind. That everything that she meets, that's why every character is kind of an automaton. They all kind of look alike. They have the same sunglasses, have kind of the same vibe, and they don't really interact because it's really just her fantasizing about different aspects of who she is. So, and she's self-destructing, and it's the cycles of self-destructing. That's why it kind of ends where it begins with the wheel and blah, blah, blah. So,
I am not smart enough to understand your movies,
but I think you were.
After this explanation, I am like.
But it's not an explanation. It's like, I don't even know if that's right. And then I'm not trying to.
That was your intention. So it's beautiful and it's crazy at the same time.
It's there, but it's not like it needs to be there. It's the subtext buried beneath the subtext. You could pull anything you want out of it. You could see it as just a straight linear vampire story. And in that case, why does she walk?
And that was me. I was like, hey, she's a vampire. Why is she walking in the sunlight? I thought she would die.
Well, if you watch Jess Franco's Vampiros Lesbos, they walk around all the daytime too. Because I mean, it's more beautiful to see people and more interesting to see character all in black trumping through the snow and, you know, in the daytime than the night. And the other thing is, you know, because they're vampires, but I invented these kinds of vampires, so they can do whatever the fuck they want. Because who gives a shit? You know, no one cowers from a cross. No one puts garlic away. Like, it's not, you know, we sleep in a coffin only because it's fetishy and aesthetic, you know, reasons are interesting to me. And that was the only time I put a vampire in a coffin. And none of them have fangs, so it's, you know, I do my own thing. But the other thing too is you got to remember I shoot these movies for fuck all. So if you're ever made a movie and you try to do night shoots, good luck.
Oh, shoot.
And especially in the winter in Canada, and it was the coldest winter this past winter when we shot
Holy crap.
I mean, Ariel was so fucking cold. You can't.
She was mad.
Oh my God. We had to shoot in installments. Like, we'd go out, she'd walk the streets for like a minute. We'd have to go in and warm her up. Go back out, shoot another minute, come back in and warm her up. Like, it was so cold. So, night shoots would have been, I would have destroyed all. We would have all died. So, on a practical reason, night shoots weren't.
No, I love your practical explanation, but I also love the whole like cerebral, it's all happening in her head thing too. It's
sure. Yeah, I mean that's all the movies, and in like Female Werewolf, for instance, it's, you know, that's my ex-wife as the werewolf, you know. And so
wow.
And we were literally, you know, this is a little not personal, but I mean, we were trying to save the marriage at that point, and my way of trying to save it was making a movie with her as deifying her. And so it was that movie as me trying
It's
to.
kind of sweet.
Well, it was, and I was like, okay, when we can get this budget to make it, and we can do something with some of the budget, I can salary some of it out, and we can make this movie. It's all about you, a shrine to you. But then it ended up becoming, in retrospect, when I see it, about sexual frustration and desire that's unquenched, and I'm like, shit, that was all bubbling around the destruction of this relationship. So, but I wasn't even aware of it at the time. But now when I see it, I can't really watch that movie ever again because it's like, ugh,
it's too personal.
I feel it. And that's what that movie really is about. It's this person who has desire that's unquenched, and and the animal part is kind of like just her desire let loose. That's all it really is.
You put your heart into all of your movies.
Yeah, one thing was one thing that caught my attention was this, because I know that Neko and I are pretty big fans of Ghost, and I thought this was.
Oh my god! I forgot about that. I sold that costume. That's
that was so awesome. I'm like, wow. All right.
Love
oh god,
Ghost.
Yeah, I'm a huge Kiss junkie. Like that was how it all started for me. I still am, and I ran the official Kiss magazine with Gene and Paul for 10 years.
Oh wow.
And, I was at their house, and my kids that grew up in a Kiss concert, they never had to pay to see Kiss since they've been alive. So it's been a huge part of my life. And to me, Kiss or Ghost is like, I came into the fold at Super Kiss in about 79. And I missed the whole early. So to me, coming on board Ghost early felt like I was finding Kiss. And I've been following Ghost and the mythology. And, it helps that they have wicked songs, too. And Tobias Forge is a genius.
It was really crazy with us with Kiss because we go to the Maryland Death Fest quite regularly. I think we've only met. Oh, yeah, Ghost. Shit, sorry.
Yeah.
We go to the Maryland Death Fest quite regularly, and I mean, we've really only missed one. And we went to the Maryland Death Fest, and Ghost was playing, and we're like, whatever. It was very, very, very like 2015 early Ghost, and we were like,
actually, it's earlier than that.
You think so?
Yeah, 2015 was kind of was Meliora, I think, right?
Yeah, that's the year that we saw the. Yeah.
So we had a roommate for a minute, and he's like, "Hey, there's like a acoustic Ghost, like." What did they do at Soundgarden? It was just like an acoustic.
It's just like
3
4 or 5
songs. Yeah.
Isn't that they were doing that for a while, like pre-show, weren't they, for the VIPs?
Yeah, it was like just like selected dates, and they were
we just went there. Like we were going to buy records, and we went there, and they played.
Right.
I love theatrics. I love Ghost.
Well, me too. I mean, my God, the pageantry is crazy.
Yes.
But also again, I think Tobias Forge, because it's all him, right? It's his band, It's his vision, it's his songwriting, it's his machine. I think he's a fucking genius. Like,
wait a minute, wasn't that year that it was like Repulsion and Ghost at the same time, or?
Well, he was in another band.
Repugnant, Repulsion, I can't remember.
Repugnant.
You're Repugnant. So it was at the Maryland Death Fest. He was in Repugnant.
Oh, so he was like kind of like opening for himself, kind of thing. Yeah.
And there was like a Repugnant thing, and then the Ghost thing was like kind of like.
Yeah, that was during the first record, and like I wasn't really sure what they were trying to do. And then the second one, I was like, "Oh, I get it now," and I really like this.
I went crazy for the second record.
Well, the thing about Ghost is that, especially like, I wouldn't call myself like a hardcore metal. I am like old metal and like hard rock, and I like everything, but not like a super like metalhead guy. So, but what I think was going on with Ghost, I know what was going on with Ghost is that they looked the part, like they were rocking something, and then they sounded like the Blue Oyster Cult. I think a lot of people are like, what's going on here, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's how that's kind of
melodic, it sounds like but
this chapel of rituals,
it's like,
of dead.
This is like karaoke.
It's like pop music, but they look like they're trying. And but what I always said, my defense of Ghost when I would encounter all my metalhead friends who still to this day don't like them, but because of that, I say, well, they're not. You gotta view them like if you've ever seen.
I'm a Ghost apologist. I love them.
Have you ever seen the movie The Phantom of the Paradise? Brian De Palma's Phantom.
Yes.
To me, it's like Ghost. You got to think would be the band that opens the fucking Paradise.
Yeah,
that's what they are. They're like the big '70s rock. meta conceptual, you know, that's what they are. They're like their theatrical experience. So you gotta, you know, each one, like, it's like Kiss, you know, it's like someone asked me, like, would you like Kiss if they didn't have all the makeup and all that shit? And I was trying to think about it, like, if I had heard a Kiss song on the radio and I didn't know it was associated with like Marvel Comics and spitting blood and bad, I probably wouldn't actually, you know. But by the same token, if I had seen Kiss's iconography and their music was shit,
Yeah.
I probably would have walked away from that too. So it's when the two kind of inform each other,
Right.
and it works. And that's the way it is with Ghost to me. It's like the you know, the pageantry and all that, the story and the mythology is so wild and so cool. And then the music works in the context of what they're doing,
and they stay true to it. They're like
it builds.
I remember because I also love King Diamond, and
yeah, for sure, yeah, love
yes,
King Diamond. Yeah.
And King is a little bit older, so we have purchased tickets, I think 2 or 3 times, and King had to cancel. So we finally, and it's the same venue too. So we saw Ghost after, or excuse me, was King Diamond after, or
it was after?
So this is a really cool venue. So we see King Diamond, or we see Ghost. It's amazing, and I love King Diamond. Like 15 years ago, I named my cat Abigail. Like, I love King Diamond.
Yeah.
And then King Diamond was like a couple weeks after Ghost, and I was like, that was a tough one to follow. And I know that's mean to say, but like Ghost was so over the top and so good. And I was actually kind of mad at King Diamond because he didn't sing Abigail, but like whatever.
I mean, it is, you can't, yeah, sometimes double billing concerts is not fair. I remember seeing, like, when I started having my big Kiss experience where I was like allowed to hang with them, and then to see a Kiss show, you don't have to like them to like get your brains blown out by all the pomp and circumstance, explosions and and seeing that Kiss show was like, whoa, fuck, this is amazing. Now I like all music. I like synth stuff. I love Depeche Mode, you know, and Ghost covers Depeche Mode. I mean, so a good song's a good song to me. I think Martin Gore is a brilliant songwriter. Anyways, a huge Depeche Mode fan my whole life. And then I saw Kiss, and then a couple days later I went to see Mode again. And I was like, I don't think I like Depeche Mode anymore, because it was like going from this like wah circus, and then going to see these like guys bumping around on stage, and I was like,
yeah,
I know, and I felt so guilty too, because I have always been the biggest King Diamond fan. He laughed at me.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Next time, King, if he does come around, if you see him again, if he does, that does happen.
Yeah.
Make sure you have a big space around him. Don't go see anyone else, right? Then you won't be disappointed.
Right. Yeah. So, is there any film you're working on now, or are you just taking a break?
Yeah, no, well, I just wrote a book. Like I said, this book called Corman Poe, which Roger Corman and I wrote together during the pandemic. It's about his 8 Poe films. We launched it. He's 97. He's still rocking, still making movies.
Crap.
So we launched it in LA in June. Came back, went to New York, launched it, blah, blah, blah. So I was not going to make any more movies for a while because I was going to focus. I got a couple more books I'm writing, running my magazine, doing a bunch of other shit, you know.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know, I'm not gonna stop. And also, you know, making movies for Full Moon's great, but again, because I don't own them, I don't control them after they're out in the world. And I was like, yeah, maybe I'll just wait. I have a bigger movie I want to make. I'll just wait a couple of years and make that big movie if I can find the money. Blah, blah.
Can you give us a spoiler?
Well, no, I wasn't. No, I can't give you a spoiler on that. But yeah, so if it happens, great. But if not, then whatever. So I was like, I'm not going to do it. But of course, I'm sitting around going, well, fuck, you know, I do all these things myself, and I'm a one-man show, and so why don't I just take some shekels in my pocket that I already have and run this pony up and make my own movie? So I am prepping one right now. I don't know when I'm going to shoot it yet, but it's sort of a companion piece to Parasite Lady. It's sort of like a sort of a prequel. You know, her name's Miranda in that, so this movie's called Miranda.
Okay.
But it's not really that. I don't even know if I'm going to cast Ariel as this character. It's just going to be an impression of that character, maybe would have happened to her in a different version of herself. Like it's hard to explain, but I'm going to be doing that next. I don't know what's going to happen to it. I'm going to shoot it. I'm going to cut it. I'm going to create the score for it. They usually make the music first, so I'll do the music first, and maybe I'll bury it. Maybe I'll release it. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to do it because it's a fool's game for me to say I'm never going to do that again because, of course, I can't
maybe
long. I need to do it. So yeah,
it's very interesting that you say that you have the music already cut, etc.
I always make the music first. Always. Yeah. At least the theme, at least parts of the music so that I know how it's going to sound.
Yeah, because you kind of probably see it in your head a little bit.
Right.
I can see that, like when you're directing, that you are directing to the music that you've already made, and it's kind of cool.
Yeah, you're thinking about when you're making the music, you're thinking, okay, usually I come up with a poster first and a title and an idea, and then I find a location. Sometimes I'm not sure which comes first, but they around that same time. So I get a mood or the vibe of where it's gonna happen. And so what's the feeling? What's the emotion?
Mm-hmm.
And then the poster is going to set the tone for what this. It's like a mission statement. It's never going to look as good as the poster, of course, but who cares? Because movies have a long history of never looking as good as their posters. So, but it's going to have the mood of that. Then I go and start making the music based on those two things, and then the images come after that.
Well, Chris, thank you for joining us tonight. It was a blast. How can people find you and your work, your books? I'm very curious with that.
Just go to chrisalexanderonline.com. I think everything's pretty much there.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, chrisalexanderonline.com. That is it. And then find me I am not on Twitter or X or whatever the fuck that's called.
I haven't been on X since it happened.
I'm on Instagram. I like Instagram to some degree. I like communicating with people. I just don't like over communicating. You know what I mean? Like it's such but you have to in order to stay in the game. You know, otherwise I'd be some weird hermit living in my house and not, only seeing my kids. I'd be going insane. So find me all over the place, but find me at that website. That's normally where all my stuff is.
I appreciate you coming on because I honestly, when I was watching Parasite Woman. Okay.
Parasite
Lady. Sorry.
Which, by the way, is also a Kiss lyric. If anyone, and I did.
It is.
I didn't get sued, but it's the Parasite Lady from Hotter Than Hell. But anyways, go on.
I'm watching Parasite Lady, and I'm hearing everything you're telling me about how you're scoring your own. You're thinking about the music before, and I said to him, I was like, "This could be a music video." Like the way it's shot and the way that everything just looked so amazing.
There's all the horror stuff was kind of like but when I was a kid too, I was obsessed with Miami Vice, the TV show.
You should be.
And Miami Vice was, I think it was even pitched as MTV Cops, and it was like they would play all these great songs in their entirety with just like Don Johnson just driving his car through the night streets of Miami with Dire Straits and all this shit.
That's amazing. Why didn't that happen?
And I was just like, it was like very Giallo-esque before I knew what a Giallo was. And so music video, a film feeling like a music video to me is no insult. I think that's
and the beautiful thing is because your imaging is so amazing, unique, and beautiful, depending on your mood. If you had everything muted, you could look at your film and say, this is a 9 Inch Nails video. Or you can say, it's a Pink Floyd video. Just depending on how you feel and how you're interpreting, like, the visuals.
Right. I mean, that's an interesting stunt. That's what speaking of Floyd, that's what we used to do, right? We'd take Wizard of Oz and throw on Dark Side of the Moon.
Uh-huh.
Wow. I mean, none of that was intentional, but it changes the context of, sound is so, I realized that as a young kid when watching Halloween, seeing how fucking boring it was. If you take the music out of Halloween, it's just a bunch of babysitters walking around the street while a guy in a Shatner mask peeks around the corner. I mean, it's not scary, but you throw John Carpenter music on it, and every second is menacing. Every shrub, every sidewalk crack is scary because of the music, right?
Music changes everything with horror films. Like without it, like if you were to mute it, it's like, oh, this ain't nothing. You put the music back on.
Gone. Sound. The introducing sound to cinema was the greatest invention since cinema itself.
So final thoughts. Anything new coming out?
No, you can buy my book, Corman Poe.
I need to buy that book,
Yeah,
actually.
you can find it literally everywhere. Amazon, it's everywhere.
I can go to Barnes & Noble or anywhere.
Yeah. Everywhere.
Okay, cool.
It's a really nice book. I'm really proud of it. It's all 8 films, just Roger and I talking about them.
The way you speak of it, I am proud of you, and I am excited to purchase it.
Well, thank you. No, it's good. It's not an embarrassing, it's not a pity purchase. You'll really get something out of it. It's also beautifully designed, very colorful and lush, and it's a nice little piece of work. So
yeah,
that's one thing I'm focused on at the moment.
I've learned a lot more about you. Just talking. So we're gonna have to do this again because there's I'm gonna pick your brain about a lot.
Whenever you want.
I've been hogging all the mic time because
you guys are adorable. You guys are adorable, and I'm happy to come on anytime.
Oh man, thank you so much.
Power couple. You're a power couple. I like that. All right.
We try.
Yes.
All right. Well, just hang on a minute. So we're gonna do our little outro, and then
we're gonna keep you in forever.
I got kids eyeballing me, going, "When can we come down?" We're watching the TV show Fargo, and we got to get to the next episode. So,
okay. Yeah. Hold on 1 second.
1 second, and we'll say goodbye.
For the rest of you, please subscribe, like our channel,
etc. We're cool.
See you later.
Just